Iran is developing now ballistic missiles that are intercontinental ballistic missiles for 8,000-kilometer range. You don't want to be under the nuclear gun of these people who are not necessarily rational and who chant death to America. You know, Iron Dome, Israel developed it, share it with America.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sat down for a wide-ranging and hard-hitting interview with Ben Shapiro, which is what I'd be saying to you if I were delusional, but I'm not. In reality, Netanyahu is on yet another leg of his influencer propaganda tour, and unsurprisingly, the topic of Iran came up yet again. For decades, Netanyahu has been pressuring the United States to go to war with Iran on Israel's behalf. Yet, despite all the money we've spent and wars we've fought on behalf of this tiny country in the Middle East, Netanyahu wants you to believe that Israel is actually very strong, pulls its own weight, and actually treats us better than any of our other allies. Take a look.
The problem that you've had over the years, the United States, is that you didn't have these allies pulling their weight. And Israel is an ally, it's a fighting ally that pulls its weight. Not only that, not only do we fight, we don't ask for Americans to bring boots on the ground. We've done the job of defending ourselves pretty well, I'd say, over the last 77 years. But it's not only that. We've also defeated enemies who are your enemies who are trying to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles armed with nuclear warheads to attack your cities. That's what Iran was doing.
You see what Netanyahu did there? So he trashed America's allies for allegedly failing to pull their own weight. In some cases, you could make that argument, especially when it comes to military spending among our NATO allies, something that Donald Trump has pointed out and, to his credit, has encouraged those countries to spend more money on. But that's what Netanyahu is claiming in regard to our other allies, even though Israel is the single largest recipient of US foreign aid. At the same time, Netanyahu positioned Israel as the heroic ally that saves us from Iran, which, to be quite honest with you, isn't really much of a threat to the United States at all. I mean, look at their retaliatory strikes after the US bombed Iran's nuclear sites. Let me just tell you something. A country that's looking to kill Americans isn't gonna hit up the US government ahead of a retaliatory strike and say what they're gonna do, how they're gonna do it, so US troops can evacuate and no one gets hurt. But anyway, Iran does believe in Palestinians' right to self-determination and is literally the only country that seems to want to defend them. So I suspect that has more to do with Israel's desire to go to war with Iran, or to have the United States go to war with Iran. And let me just remind you all that Israel is a nuclear power. They don't acknowledge the fact they have nuclear weapons, but they do. And Israel is not part of the non-proliferation treaty, which Iran is a part of. Nonetheless, as for Netanyahu's claim that Israel pulls their weight, as we all know too well, Israel is a welfare state that relies on Americans who live in a country drowning in $37 trillion in debt, by the way. Israel relies on us to borrow even more money to bankroll their belligerent military activity in the Middle East, including the genocide in Gaza and the illegal annexation of the West Bank. $30 billion over the last year alone. That's the reality. And that's the paradigm we've been operating under for so long that the prime minister is under the assumption that the same BS talking points that dragged the United States into war in Iraq, Syria, Libya, there were boots on the ground in Libya, by the way, and more, is going to work again. I mean, just listen to this garbage.
Iran is developing now ballistic missiles that are intercontinental ballistic missiles for 8,000-kilometer range. What does that mean? They add another 3,000 kilometers and they've got under their atomic guns, the New York City in target, Washington, Boston, Miami, Mar-a-Lago. Okay, so that is a very great danger. You don't want to be under the nuclear gun of these people who are not necessarily rational and who chant death to America. So I think Israel has played a very important part in pushing that threat away.
You had the United States bombing Iran's nuclear sites. It wasn't IDF soldiers who did that. The United States, on Israel's behalf, bombed Iran's nuclear sites. I would venture to say that the country that's more of a risk is the belligerent one that's currently conducting a genocide and happens to be a secret nuclear power. And that's, of course, the government of Israel. I would venture to say that, the bad guys in this scenario right now is the United States and Israel, who decided to attack Iran when Iran was under the impression that they were still in the middle of engaging in nuclear peace talks with the United States. Remember when that happened? Yeah. What about the country that decided to strike Qatar and kill or attempt to kill Hamas peace negotiators in the middle of ceasefire negotiations? That was Israel, right? You want to have a conversation about the threat to world peace, especially when it comes to what's currently transpiring in the Middle East. Let's have a conversation about the current unhinged far-right government of Israel. Israel is now engaged in a 7-front war. 7-front war that they have started. Okay, Hamas is not in Lebanon. Hamas, isn't in freaking Tunisia. Like all of these various countries that have been bombed by Israel. Isn't that an issue here? But no, we should all live in fear here in the United States because Israel's enemy is something that we need to be concerned about as American citizens who, again, are experiencing our quality of life diminish year after year, who are experiencing more and more of our resources getting funneled to servicing our $37 trillion in debt. Republicans in Congress just cut $1 trillion from our Medicaid system, so poor Americans won't be able to get any healthcare coverage through the Medicaid system. But when it comes to shelling out the billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to a foreign country, Israel, oh, well, that's okay. Money well spent. I invite Netanyahu to come on this show. I would love to have a conversation with him. Because I get it. I get that he wants to talk to friendly individuals who let him run his mouth and attempt to instill fear in the hearts and minds of Americans who might be easily impressionable, might believe that Iran is an actual threat to us. No, Iran is not a threat to the United States. Iran is the only power in the Middle East that seeks to at least check Israel as it's slaughtering Palestinians. And Israel can't have that. They want to be the superpower in the region. They want to have full control. They want the United States to topple regimes on its behalf. And it's enough. This is enough. It's just so utterly gross. But look, Netanyahu did come back to the question of Israel's alliance with the United States. And he dropped this whopper, and I want you to pay very close attention to what he says here.
Iron Dome, Israel developed it, share it with America. Arrow missiles, they shoot these missiles from the sky, way, way up in altitude, developed by Israel, co-shared with America.
Wait, Israel gave the United States the Iron Dome? Are you kidding me? The Iron Dome is Israel's missile defense system, which the United States, meaning its taxpayers, have funded every step of the way. American taxpayers funded its research and development, construction, and in fact continue to pay for its missile replenishment. Between 2009 and 2011, the Obama administration, who, by the way, the Likud party loathes, Netanyahu loathes, because Obama had the audacity to one time tell Netanyahu, hey, maybe ease up with the illegal settlements. But the Obama administration provided more than $1.6 billion for the Iron Dome's initial development. In 2019, Congress passed a memorandum of understanding, which provides Israel with a guaranteed $500 million a year for 10 years to restock the missiles needed for the Iron Dome. But that's apparently not enough because Congress has approved additional funds for the system's interceptors. And that includes $225 million back in 2014 and another $1 billion in 2021. That was when AOC voted in favor of sending Israel another billion and then cried about it on the House floor. I don't understand her. Anyway, let's not also forget about the $14.3 billion emergency aid package to Israel that Congress approved in 2024. Yes, that was for offensive weapons that Israel used to raise Gaza and engage in mass slaughter, but it also included money to replenish the Iron Dome so they wouldn't have to deal with the blowback or the consequences of committing so many atrocities and war crimes. That's the reality. So again, I'd love to invite Benjamin Netanyahu, since he is on this media tour in the United States, to come on this show. Because if he's a strong leader, if he's the kind of prime minister who's unafraid, maybe he needs to sit down over here and answer some actual difficult questions. Because he's not gonna get it on Ben Shapiro's show, that's for sure.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.